Hello and welcome to the first in our series of coast lessons from GCSE Home Learning at Mr. Joggers. Our first lesson is on coastal erosion, a term which you've probably come across before, and it is relevant to all GCSE specifications. Just like to begin with a photograph of a hotel, asking you what happened to this hotel. In fact, this was a hotel that people were staying in when it collapsed. Now, probably you can guess that this is connected to coastal erosion. In actual fact, this hotel here, I'm just going to circle it there on the picture, was on the coastline and it collapsed overnight during heavy weather, and it's connected to what we call coastal erosion. In fact, all of these houses, these properties here, these high value installations, are all at risk of coastal erosion. So it is important that we study it. In addition, you'll find that the coastlines across the country are shaped by very interesting features because of coastal erosion. Here we have an arch. In this picture we have a headland with some very interesting features such as stacks sticking out, created by coastal erosion. Here I have something called a wave cut platform, again a very interesting feature caused by coastal erosion. So these erosional features, this risk from erosion at the coast is very important for us to study, and that's why today's lesson title is What Causes Coastal Erosion? So what I'd like you to do first of all, give yourself 2 or 3 minutes to do this, is in your note paper or your exercise book, write the lesson title. That is this, lesson 1, what causes coastal erosion. I'd then like you to write your key words, which are these 3. We'll be using these words today: abrasion, attrition, hydraulic action. And then I would like you to try the do now and stretch questions. So the question 1 here, I need you to decide if it's true or false. Question 2, true or false. And then there is a stretch for you as well. You may now want to pause this video for 2 or 3 minutes while you complete your lesson title, keywords, and the do now question. Okay. A coastline is the place where a river meets the sea. True or false? In actual fact, that is false. It is not where a river meets the sea, but it's any place where the land meets the sea. The UK being an island, England, Scotland and Wales are an island, so we have a coastline all around our land. We meet the sea all around our country. Some countries have no coastlines because they do not meet the sea, because maybe they're surrounded by other countries and no coasts. Erosion is the process where rock is gradually worn away over time. Were you aware of this? That is true. So we're looking at this rock being broken down by the sea, and we will see that today in the lesson. And stretch, how might waves affect the coastline? So waves, the water that comes to the beach, how do they affect a coastline? You may have had sort of actions. Well, they cause coastal erosion. This picture here, you can see the waves have attacked what was a road. You can see here the lines on the road there. This was a road which has been attacked by coastal erosion because of these waves here. But also, what you may not be aware of is waves can create new beaches. If this wave is carrying sand and deposits the sand here, it can create new beaches. So we do have different features of on our coastline created by waves. Okay, let's move on to our lesson looking at coastal erosion. We've got our 3 words, we've got our lesson title. It does apply to all specifications, and just to show you here, this one is from the AQA board. Erosion, we are required to know the meaning of hydraulic power, abrasion and attrition, and that's why these words are our chosen words for today's vocabulary. We're going to use these words. Okay, so what my geographers all cringe at is when I say to you, what did the cliff say to the sea? And this is a joke. Well, in actual fact, what the cliff said to the sea was, ah, because the cliff is being attacked by these 3 things. Abrasion is attacking the cliff, attrition is attacking the cliff, and hydraulic power is attacking the cliff. These are 3 types of erosion which attack the cliff, and we're going to look at each of these 3 types and see what they are. You can see here the A for abrasion, the A for attrition, and the H for hydraulic power, hydraulic action. So let's look at hydraulic power first of all. Here we have a cliff on the coastline, and here we have the sea, the waves. And as the water hits the cliff, they force air into cracks. So there may be little cracks in the cliff. The water will go into the cracks and break that apart a little. But if there's air in the cracks, when the water goes in, it pushes the air has nowhere to go, and the rocks start breaking off. So as waves hit a cliff, they force air to become trapped inside cracks in the rock. And this causes the rock to be broken apart. And this is hydraulic power. And this word hydraulic really refers to water. So we're looking at water power here. Sometimes it's called water action. But the force of the water traps air inside cracks in the rock, causing those rocks and the base of the cliff to be broken apart. You can see here on this diagram, again, there's my cliff, and some of these rocks have probably fallen off or been broken off from the cliff because of hydraulic action. What did the cliff say to the sea? Can we remember? And why is it R? Abrasion, attrition, and hydraulic power, and we have looked at hydraulic power. Going back to this diagram, some of these actual rocks that are now loose, they are also hit the cliff. So last time we saw in hydraulic power we had the water hitting the cliff, but also the rocks can hit the cliff. The rocks that have been broken off by hydraulic power can hit the cliff. And when these rocks, carried by the waves, rub against the cliff, or sometimes the base of the sea down there, the seabed, it causes more rocks to break off. And this is called abrasion. Okay, so hydraulic action, hydraulic power is when the water hits the cliff, but abrasion is when rocks hit the cliff. What did the cliff say to the sea? And why did it say R? Abrasion, attrition, and hydraulic power. So we've seen hydraulic power, that was when the water hits the cliff. We've seen abrasion, where rocks hit the cliff. So our last one is attrition. So attrition, let's look down here. We've got 2 rocks, and if you notice what they're doing, they're actually colliding with each other. So collide means hit against, hit together, hit against each other, rub together, bash together. Yeah, that is when rocks collide with each other and they break each other down. So this time we're not attached to the cliff itself, but rocks are breaking each other down. So hydraulic action is when the water hits the cliff and forces air into cracks, breaking the rock apart. Abrasion is when rocks hit the cliff, causing the cliff to break apart. But attrition is where rocks hit each other and they actually smooth each other, they break each other down very, very slowly, but they break each other down to very small particles, and that could be where sand sometimes comes from. So the actual sand in the sea may have come on the beach or floating in the sea, may have come from the cliffs themselves. What did the cliff say to the sea? You should know it by now. Okay, we have abrasion, attrition, and hydraulic power. Hydraulic power, the water hitting the cliff. Abrasion, the rock hitting the cliff. And attrition, where the rocks collide with each other. And you can see this diagram has all 3. I've there got waves pounding at the cracks in the cliff, that hydraulic action, hydraulic power. I've got abrasion here where rocks themselves are hitting the cliff. And if you look at the attrition, you can see where rocks collide with each other and they get smaller and smaller. So there could be an order to these processes of erosion. For example, hydraulic power breaks the rocks from the cliff. That is the water hitting the cliff and breaking the rocks from the cliff. And then some of those rocks hit the cliff as well. And those rocks that are broken off hit the cliff and rub against the cliff, breaking other bits of rock off. And then we're left with lots of bits of rock, and they hit and they collide with each other, and they get smaller and smaller over time until they become sand. And all of these processes of coastal erosion are destroying our coastlines, destroying our cliffs. So if you were to live on top of a cliff or walk along the top of the cliff, you could be in danger because that cliff could collapse due to these 3 coastal erosion processes. So we're going to have a check here, some questions. You don't need to write these ones down, although you can, but I'm just going to pause after each one and see if you can think of an answer. Don't be scared to talk your answer out loud. If there's someone else in the room listening to you, they will hear that. That's great because they might ask you what on earth you have been learning and you can tell them. So first of all, what is erosion? So erosion is the breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces. So any sort of answer that you've got like that, the breaking down of rock into smaller pieces. Question 2. What are the 3 kinds of erosion? You should now know this. Think of the joke, what the cliff said to the sea. And you've got there abrasion, attrition, and hydraulic action. In which type of erosion do rocks collide? So you've got 3 to choose from there. Where do the rocks collide with each other? See if you can remember. Attrition is your answer. Well done if you got that right. Sometimes people confuse abrasion and attrition. So attrition is gone. We've got 2 other types of erosion left. Which type of erosion are rocks eroding the coastline? So where rocks are rubbing against, hitting or colliding with the cliff. That answer should be, I've got a wrong answer there, that should be abrasion. You're probably confused when that popped up there. Abrasion is the answer when the rocks are eroding the cliff. And finally, in what kind of erosion is air forced into cracks? You're left with your last answer. And of course that is hydraulic action, sometimes called hydraulic power. Okay, so that is our understanding. What we need to do is put that together. So we've got a little bit of writing. I'm going to guide you through the process. But the exam can sometimes ask us about these erosion processes. They might ask you about one process for just 1 or 2 marks. They might ask you about all 3 processes for 6 marks. Or they might ask you, why is it that hotels or property or land on top of cliffs are vulnerable for falling into the sea? Why are they vulnerable and at risk of falling into the sea? The answer is because of these erosional processes. So let's have a look. Outline the processes, that is your abrasion, attrition and hydraulic action, that can affect, I suppose that is erode, the coastlines. Okay, so the first one, I've got something is when the power of waves causes air to be trapped in cracks of a cliff. This causes particles of rock to break off. I'd like you to complete that, please, using the correct term in there and then write out the full sentence. Okay, so that one there, we should have hydraulic power or action is when the power of waves causes air to be trapped in cracks of a cliff. Okay, check your spelling there, okay, of hydraulic. Okay, abrasion is when, we'll do this one together. Abrasion is when, well, this is when the waves, hydraulic power is when the waves hit the sea, so abrasion is when rocks that are in the water rub against the cliff, causing more rocks to break off. And your task now, after completely writing sentence 1 and sentence 2, full sentences please, correctly, You should now have a go at writing the third one by yourself. You can pause this video while you do that. And your third one there is attrition, is when rocks which are carried by the water collide. Good word, collide, in there. 2 T's in attrition, 2 L's in collide. Okay, erosion then. 3 processes of erosion that we've looked at, and that is the introductory first lesson to coasts. Coastal erosion is important because it does shape our coastlines. I hope you've learned from that lesson today. If not, do go through it again or check the BBC Bite-Size Coastal Erosion page. There will be links in the comments below. If you've liked this, do please subscribe to the YouTube channel so that I can keep making more of these for you and helping you. Twitter at Mr. Joggers. That was our first lesson on coastal erosion.